Good morning and welcome to Walk Before You Run. Today, let's walk through Second Chronicle, um, chapter 20. And I want to start at verse 3. And it says, And Jehoshaphat feared and set himself to seek the Lord and proclaimed a fast throughout all Judah. And Judah gathered themselves together to ask help of the Lord. Even out of all the cities of Judah, they came to seek the Lord. And Jehoshaphat stood in the congregation of Judah and Jerusalem in the house of the Lord before the new court and said, O Lord God of our fathers, art not thou God in heaven, and rulest not thou over all the kingdoms of the heathen? And in thy name, in thy hand, is there not power and might, so that none is able to withstand thee? Art not thou our God who didst drive out the inhabitants of this land before thy people Israel, and gave it to the seed of Abraham, thy friend forever? I love that part, to be called the friend of God forever. And they dwelt therein, and have built thee a sanctuary therein for thy name, saying, If when evil cometh upon us as the sword, judgment or pestilence or famine, we stand before this house and in thy presence, for thy name is in this house, and cry unto thee in our affliction. Then thou wilt hear and help. And now behold, the children of Ammon and Moab and Mount Seir, whom thou wouldest not let Israel invade, when they came out of the land of Egypt, but they turned from them and destroyed them not. Behold, I say how they reward us to come to cast us out of thy possession, which thou hast given us to inherit. O our God, wilt thou not judge them? For we have no might against this great company that cometh against us, neither know we what to do, but our eyes are upon thee. Um, Zora Neale Hurston once wrote a book entitled Their Eyes Were Watching God. And I thought about that title when I was reading this. And I thought about, are our eyes watching God? Because if our eyes are on God, then we won't be afraid, or at least we won't allow fear to overtake us, because we will see the deliverer in, our sight. And in this passage, uh, Moab is invading Judah. And so the king, Jehoshaphat, he goes to God for some kind of clarity, for direction, and for help, because he reminds God, not that God needs any reminding from us, but he reminds God of what has taken place. And he goes to him and he tells him, these people are trying to invade us, and these are the very folks that when you brought us into our land, you know we didn't bother them. Verse 10 says, And now behold, the children of Ammon and Moab and Mount Seir, whom thou wouldest not let Israel invade when they came out of the land of Egypt, but they turned from them and destroyed them not. And he's saying, they could have been destroyed. We could have taken care of them, our forefathers, but you said no. And now they're coming against us. So what do we do? The question for us, what do we do when trouble comes our way? What do we do when things start happening that uh, we feel like we have no control over, or people come against us that we could have done something about a long time ago, but God told us no. So, what do we do when things happen that appear to be out of our control? And it almost appears that God allowed these things to happen, or this situation to come up, or the roadblocks, that are roadblocks now. If God would have just let us handle that back in the day, we wouldn't even have these roadblocks. So, what do we do when we come against situations like that? We do just what Jehoshaphat did. It says that verse 3 says, Jehoshaphat feared and set himself to seek the Lord and proclaimed a fast throughout all Judah. When we hit a roadblock in life, when we come to some situations that it just seems it's too hard, too big for us to handle, do we stop and go to God? Do we fast and call on some friends, a corporate fast, ask others to join us when things are too much for us to handle? What do we do? Where are our eyes? Are our eyes on the situation, on the roadblock, or are our eyes on God, the person who can do something about our situation? We have to take note from Jehoshaphat. And it wasn't that he put his head in a hole like an ostrich and just pretend that the situation didn't exist. He acknowledged the situation, but once he acknowledged the situation, then he went to somebody who could do something about the situation. And that will always be God, because um, I like what he said in verse 6. He said, and said, O Lord God of our fathers, art not thou God in heaven? Don't you sit high and see everything? Don't you sit in a position to be over everything? He says, and rulest not thou over all the kingdoms of the heathen? And that just means of the nation. Aren't you ruler over everything and everybody? You know, you're God of all creation. So you can handle anything that takes place. He goes on to say, and in thine hand is there not power and might, so that none is able to withstand thee? He's saying, Father, I know I don't care what my situation is, what any situation is, how big it is, how broad it is, how bad it is. I know that you have all the power, that you can handle it all. And so that's just a word to the wise. That's a word to us, that when we get into a situation, I don't care if it's a situation that was created by our hands. Sometimes we get ourselves in some trouble. I don't care if it's situations that we put ourselves in, or if it's a situation that came upon us. We have to be like Jehoshaphat in verse 6, knowing that God is all powerful and he has all might. So he can do it and he will do it. And so we have to trust him, that no matter what comes against us, that our eyes are watching God. And we're not watching ourselves, we're not watching somebody else, we're not watching a situation, but that our eyes are watching God. And sometimes it might mean that we have to stand still and wait a minute to see what he does. And it might put us in an uncomfortable position, because you can't be more uncomfortable than if you know that someone, and more than one, but that people are coming against you, that a great, mighty number of people are coming against you, or a great situation is coming against you. We have to be like Jehoshaphat in this situation and know that God will take care of them and take care of us. Thank you for joining me this morning. Go back and walk through Second Chronicles 20, and you can go beyond where we walk today and see what God says to you. And always, always remember that we are all blessed so that we can be a blessing to someone else. Thank you for joining me this morning, and I'll see you next time.